Today, there are over 8 billion humans on Earth. We live in glass towers, fly across oceans, and scroll through endless screens. We call ourselves the apex predator, the species that conquered everything. But that's not how our story began. For most of our existence, we were the hunted. We were food. If you could travel back 1,000,000 years, you'd see us not as masters of the planet, but as terrified survivors hiding from eyes in the dark. Saber-toothed cats, giant hyenas, crocodiles, eagles big enough to snatch children. Even the insects and microbes were eating us alive. Every night was a gamble between seeing sunrise or becoming part of something else's breakfast. Fire changed everything. It pushed the predators back, but the danger never ended. The threats just got smaller. Parasites, plagues, famine, and finally, our own inventions. The world has always been trying to eat us, one way or another, and every time we survived, we became something new. This is the story of how we went from prey to predator, from being hunted to holding the power of extinction in our hands. A story written in blood, fire, and fear. So, if you're watching this to fall asleep, remember our ancestors didn't have that luxury. Subscribe if you want to know what it took for humanity to stop being dinner, and tell me where you're watching from, because somehow, against all odds, we're still here. You know that feeling when something bites you and for a split second your brain can't tell if it was a mosquito or something worse. The skin burns, your heart races, and your instincts scream that something is wrong. That flash of panic, that ancient jolt of fear, is a memory older than civilization. It's the echo of millions of years when we were not the hunters, but the hunted. We like to imagine ourselves at the top of the food chain, but that's a story we tell to forget how close we came to being erased by the things that wanted to eat us. Imagine stepping into the ocean on a perfect day, the water calm and blue, and something brushes your leg. For one heartbeat, your body remembers, you are not in control here. Every predator that has ever stalked our ancestors still lives somewhere in the dark corners of our imagination. Sharks, lions, crocodiles, even the microscopic things we can't see. Long before we ruled the planet, we were just soft flesh trying to make it through the night. There was a time when we slept in trees because the ground belonged to the things that hunted by moonlight. Hyenas that cracked bones like twigs. Saber-toothed cats with teeth as long as your hand. The forests and savannas of Africa were never quiet. Every sound was a warning. Every shadow had teeth. And even if you escaped the claws and jaws, there were other hunters waiting inside your blood. Parasites, bacteria, viruses. The invisible predators that never stopped feeding. They shaped our immune systems the way lions shaped our legs for running. Every breath, every heartbeat, every instinct to flinch at a rustle in the dark comes from those endless nights of survival. But the strange thing is, we forgot. Somewhere between building cities and inventing antibiotics, we convinced ourselves that fear was primitive. We made light to push back the dark. We made weapons to kill from a distance. We made medicine to silence infection. And we told ourselves that the war was over, but it never ended. It only changed shape. The predators adapted. They always do. Now they don't stalk the edges of our campfires. They hide in our food, our water, our technology, bacteria that learn faster than we can kill them. Parasites that evolve inside our defenses. Algorithms that feed on our attention instead of our flesh. The rules haven't changed, only the methods have. The truth is, humanity never stopped being food. The things that want to consume us just got smarter. For every century we survive, they find new ways to test the weak spots in our armor. We may no longer hear claws in the dark, but the danger is still there, whispering in the static, growing in the petri dish, floating in the air we breathe. This is the story of how we learned to fight back, and how, even now, the world is still hungry for us. Close your eyes and imagine a night with no lights, no houses, no walls. Just the wind moving through grass taller than you are, the sound of insects, and somewhere in the dark, the slow breathing of something watching. That was every night for millions of years. Before fire, before tools, before the idea of safety, humans lived in a world that belonged to predators. We were the smallest, weakest, slowest thing on the savannah, and everything faster or stronger knew it. The first humans didn't rule the night, they hid from it. The world after sunset was a different planet. Hyenas with jaws that could crush bones patrolled the edges of the darkness. Lions, hunted by sound and smell, moving in silence until they were close enough to kill. Crocodiles waited in the water where people went to drink. Even the trees were dangerous because leopards dragged their prey upward to feed. For early humans, night meant fear, and fear meant survival. Imagine lying under the stars, pressed close to a group of others for warmth, listening to the cries of animals tearing each other apart in the dark, the smell of blood on the wind, the sound of footsteps too heavy to be human. If someone drifted too far from the group, they might never come back. Every generation learned the same lessons, carved into instinct: stay together, stay quiet, move when the sun rises. The fear wasn't weakness, it was training. Nature was teaching us to notice everything. A snapping twig could mean death. A strange silence could mean a predator was near. Even the skies weren't safe. In parts of Africa, giant eagles large enough to lift a child circled the open plains. Fossils of early hominins show puncture wounds in skulls that match eagle talons. Our ancestors didn't just fear the ground, they feared the sky. To be human in that world meant being trapped between predators on every side. It also meant learning faster than anything else alive. That is why we changed. We began to use sound to warn others, to shout, to call for help. We learned to throw stones, to climb trees faster, to read patterns in animal behavior. Every new skill started with fear. The nights full of eyes forced us to evolve. They built our intelligence, our teamwork, our awareness. Fear was the first teacher. We like to think of those early humans as primitive, but in truth, they were extraordinary survivors. They faced a world designed to destroy them and somehow found ways to adapt. They remembered where predators slept, where water was safe, where the trees offered the best escape. Every breath they took in the darkness made our species possible. When you look out at the night now and feel a chill for no reason, that's not imagination, that's memory. It's the echo of all those nights when the only light was the moon and the only thing keeping us alive was the ability to feel afraid before the eyes found us. There was a time when the ground itself felt alive with danger, the age of the hypercarnivores. A world ruled by jaws that could crush bone and claws that could open flesh in a single strike. Imagine walking across an open plain where the air smells of dust and blood, and knowing that somewhere nearby, something bigger, faster, and hungrier is waiting. The saber-toothed cat was not a myth. It was real. Its teeth were longer than your fingers, sharp enough to cut through skin and muscle like paper. It didn't stalk small prey. It hunted things our size and larger. Humans weren't hunters to them. We were walking meat. Picture an early human standing near a fresh kill, maybe a mammoth that had just fallen. The scent draws others. First come the scavengers, then the hyenas, not the kind we know today, but massive bone-cracking monsters that could crush skulls and split femurs. These hyenas didn't laugh, they thundered. Their packs were organized, smart, and relentless. They could strip an elephant down to bones in minutes. And behind them, when the air goes still and the scavengers pause, you hear it, the low growl of a saber-toothed cat stepping out of the grass. One wrong move and the story ends right there. To survive in this world meant learning how to think faster than something designed to kill you. Early humans learned to read patterns, to sense when predators were near, to recognize how wind direction could betray them. They developed tools not out of curiosity, but desperation. The first sharpened stone wasn't made for hunting, it was made to fight back. Every tool was a survival ticket. A stick hardened in fire could keep distance between you and teeth. A rock could break a skull before it broke you. Cooperation wasn't kindness, it was the only way to stay alive. Alone, a human was nothing. Together, a small band could scare off even the fiercest cat. This constant struggle against predators shaped everything about us. The way we communicate, the way we share food, the way we warn others when danger is close. The fear of the hunt turned into the spark of intelligence. We started to plan, to strategize, to prepare. The predators forced us to evolve beyond instinct. They made us human. Even the way we walk, upright and scanning the horizon, comes from those endless days of watching for movement in the grass. There's a reason those ancient animals haunt our imagination even now. Deep down, we remember them. The nights when their roars carried across the plains. The mornings when the ground was littered with bones and the smell of meat still in the air. They ruled for millions of years, and yet somehow the prey survived. We outlasted the monsters that once hunted us because fear became foresight, and foresight became intelligence. The saber-toothed cats are gone, the bone crackers extinct, but the lessons they carved into our DNA remain. To adapt was to live. To hesitate was to be shredded. Water looks peaceful until you remember what lives beneath it. For early humans, rivers and lakes were everything. They offered fish, plants, and a way to cool off in brutal heat. But every time someone stepped near the edge, they were gambling with their life, because in those waters, hidden under the surface like living traps, were crocodiles that could grow longer than a car, and hippos with jaws strong enough to snap a body in half. These were not the lazy animals we picture today. They were the apex predators of the waterways, and our ancestors were on their menu. Imagine walking miles across the savannah with the sun burning your skin, your mouth dry, your throat raw. You finally find a river, the only source of water for miles, and you kneel to drink. The air feels still. Then, without a sound, the surface breaks, a blur of scales and muscle, a flash of teeth. In less than a second, someone is gone, dragged into the dark. No time to scream, no chance to fight back. For those who lived to see it, that moment never left them. It was burned into the memory of our species. The water was never safe again. The crocodile taught us to fear what we cannot see. That lesson shaped everything about how humans approach danger. We learned to watch the surface, to read ripples, to throw stones first before stepping in. We posted guards while others drank. We gathered in groups, one drinking while the rest kept watch with spears and stones ready. That instinct to protect each other, to take turns facing danger, was not born from kindness. It was born from survival. A lone human couldn't fight a crocodile, but a group could fight back. They could shout, throw, attack from every side until the predator released its hold. The first real teamwork on Earth might have started beside a river, under the shadow of jaws. And the hippos were worse. They looked slow and harmless, but they were territorial and violent. They killed anything that came near, even lions. Early humans had to learn to recognize their moods, to track their paths, to build shelters and fires far from where hippos fed. Those who didn't learn didn't survive. Over time, this constant awareness of threat made us smarter. Our eyes became tuned to subtle movements, our ears sharper, our reactions faster. The water forced us to evolve vigilance. Every time we dipped our hands into a stream or waded into a lake, we were testing the patience of monsters that had been perfecting the art of ambush for millions of years. The crocodile horizon was where fear met intelligence, where instinct turned into strategy. Even now, when you stand by the edge of a river and feel that flicker of unease, that's not imagination. It's memory. It's the echo of every ancestor who learned the hard way that safety and death could share the same water. Long before aeroplanes filled the sky, humans learned to look up for a very different reason. The danger didn't just come from the ground, it came from above. The sky was a hunting ground, and we were prey. Picture an open plain in ancient Africa. The air is hot, the grass golden, the sound of insects constant. A group of early humans moves carefully through the brush, gathering food, carrying their children. Overhead, a shadow passes. Huge wings, wide as a car, is long. The silence breaks with a scream, high and sharp, and in a blink, a child is gone, lifted from the ground by talons the size of knives. That was the reality for our ancestors. The crowned eagle, the steppe eagle, the giant raptors of the Pleistocene, they didn't fear us, they hunted us. Fossils tell the story. Skulls of early hominins have been found with puncture marks matching the shape and size of eagle talons, not on adults, but on the young, the small, the unguarded. The evidence is clear. We were food. Every parent learned to scan the sky while working. Every child learned to stay close to cover. Looking up wasn't curiosity, it was survival. The world was full of invisible eyes above the clouds, waiting for movement. To survive meant learning the shape of shadows, the difference between a drifting vulture and a diving predator. It meant timing your steps to the rhythm of the wind, because a gust could hide the sound of wings. The air was never empty. It was a silent battlefield. This constant threat didn't just change behavior, it rewired our minds. The human brain learned to detect movement faster than almost any other mammal. Our vision evolved for depth and motion, not because we hunted, but because we were hunted. Even now, when a shadow passes quickly overhead, your body reacts before your mind understands. Your muscles tense, your heart jumps, your eyes dart upward. That's not fear of planes or birds. That's the memory of eagles that saw us as lunch. For early humans, defending against the sky required new strategies. Groups built shelters under cliffs and trees, not just for shade, but for cover. Adults took turns watching, while others gathered food. Some used branches and tools to wave and shout, scaring off anything circling too close. Over generations, we became masters of reading the world above us. The phrase "head in the clouds" didn't exist back then, because keeping your head down could mean death. The sky that we now see as open and free was once a place of terror. Every shadow meant danger. Every silence meant a hunt was about to begin. But this fear made us sharper, more coordinated, more protective. It taught us awareness, vigilance, and cooperation. Those instincts never left. They're still buried deep inside us, whispering warnings when the light shifts or when something passes overhead. The sky once tried to kill us, and the part of us that survived never forgot to look up. For millions of years, night belonged to them. The predators, the things that hunted with silence and teeth. When the sun disappeared, we disappeared with it, hiding in trees, caves, and shadows, waiting for dawn. But then, something happened that changed everything. Somewhere, on some forgotten night, an early human picked up a burning branch and refused to let it die. The night we fought back began with fire. It was small at first, a fragile glow in a world of darkness. But that glow was the beginning of a revolution. Fire wasn't just light. It was a wall, a weapon, a signal to every predator that the rules had changed. Imagine what that first night must have felt like. The air thick with smoke, the orange light flickering across the faces of people who had never seen the dark pushed away before. The eyes in the bushes, the ones that had always watched from just beyond reach, began to retreat. Lions paced at a distance, confused by the flames. Hyenas circled but didn't dare to cross. For the first time, we weren't hiding. We were standing in the open, surrounded by light that burned the fear out of the darkness. The fire was alive, dangerous, unpredictable, but it was ours. At first, it was probably an accident, lightning striking dry grass or a spark from a volcanic vent. Someone saw what it could do and tried to keep it alive. They fed it, guarded it, learned how to control it. Each flame passed down was a piece of stolen power. It changed everything about how we lived. Nights were no longer silent. Around the fire, people could see each other, talk, plan, share stories. The warmth kept away cold and sickness. The smoke drove off insects that carried disease. The predators learned to stay back. The hunted were becoming something else. Then came the tools, sharpened sticks hardened in flame, stones chipped with purpose. With fire, wood could be shaped into weapons that pierced deeper, hit harder, lasted longer. We learned to use the world's most dangerous element to make ourselves even more dangerous. The balance of power began to tilt. Animals that once ruled the night started to fear our glow. The fire turned the darkness from a hunting ground into a fortress. But fire did more than protect us. It changed our minds. It gave us time. Before fire, night was for hiding. After fire, night became for thinking. People gathered around the flames, watching them move, telling stories, imagining what else might be possible. Fire lit not just the night, but the mind. It was the first spark of technology, the first symbol of control. Every machine, every city, every light we've ever built is an echo of that moment when we refused to be prey any longer. The night we fought back wasn't just about surviving. It was about becoming something new. Fire made us dangerous. Fire made us human. It is one thing to fear the creatures with claws and fangs. It is another to fear something that looks like you. Around 200,000 years ago, humans were not alone. The world was filled with other versions of us, cousins born from the same ancient ancestors, Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Asia, and smaller mysterious groups scattered across Africa. They walked upright, made tools, used fire, and hunted. They also watched us. The most dangerous predators we ever faced were not lions or saber-toothed cats. They were other humans. Imagine traveling through a forest at dusk. You see smoke in the distance and hear voices that sound almost like your own. They use fire the same way you do. They build shelters. They even wear animal skins for warmth. But they are not your people. They are stronger, broader, and their eyes do not show kindness. The line between friend and enemy was razor thin. In that world, a meeting between two groups of humans could end with trade or with blood. Sometimes both. Archaeological evidence shows it. Bones of ancient humans with cuts made by stone blades, skulls cracked open as if for meat. It is hard to accept, but the truth is that early humans hunted each other. Competition for food, for territory, for survival drove these encounters. The land could only support so many mouths. When resources ran low, raids began. A small group would move at night, ambushing another camp, stealing supplies, and sometimes taking lives. The victors survived, the losers vanished. This cycle repeated across continents for thousands of years. Cooperation made us strong, but conflict made us cunning. We learned to read the intentions in another person's eyes because it could mean life or death. Trust became a weapon as much as fear. Neanderthals were powerful hunters, skilled and intelligent. They knew how to survive in brutal cold, how to build traps, how to work together. But when they crossed paths with modern humans, the balance shifted. Our ancestors had something new, something dangerous. They could plan across generations, communicate with complexity, and adapt faster than any other species. At first, there may have been peace. We shared knowledge, even shared blood. Every person alive today carries traces of Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA. But peace never lasts when food is scarce. The evidence tells us that sometimes coexistence turned to extinction. When the animals of the plains stopped being our greatest threat, we became that threat ourselves. The fear of predators turned inward. The fire that once protected us became the weapon that destroyed us. Every human group that survived carried the memory of those encounters. The whispers in the dark were no longer the growls of beasts, but the footsteps of others who thought the same, hungered the same, and killed the same. When we look at the stars and think of how far we have come, it is worth remembering that the hardest thing to survive was not nature, it was ourselves. It is one of the darkest truths about our past. There were times when survival meant crossing a line that cannot be easily imagined. The story of humanity is full of hunger, and when hunger grows deep enough, it changes everything. Archaeologists have found the proof carved into ancient bones, human bones. Split open, burned, scraped, clean with stone tools. The marks match those left on animal remains from the same campsites. The message is clear. Our ancestors didn't just hunt other creatures. Sometimes they ate each other. The evidence comes from caves across the world. In Spain, scientists uncovered the remains of early humans who had been butchered with precision. The flesh stripped away, the marrow scooped out. In France and Croatia, Neanderthal bones show the same patterns, clear signs of cooking and consumption. These were not accidents. These were deliberate acts of survival, or something even more complex. To imagine it is hard, but to deny it would be to rewrite history. There were winters when no animals came, when the rivers froze, when food was gone, and death pressed close. In those moments, the difference between the living and the dead was opportunity. A body was food. A body was life. But cannibalism wasn't always about starvation. Some of it was ritual. In parts of the world, human remains were treated not as trash, but as sacred objects. Skulls were cleaned, shaped, and used in ceremonies. Bones were painted and kept in places of honor. Some scientists believe this was a way to keep the dead close, to absorb their strength, to honor their memory by making them part of the living. Others see it as fear disguised as respect, a way to control death by consuming it. Either way, it blurred the line between reverence and horror. There were also darker reasons. Warfare, revenge. The ultimate act of dominance was not just to kill an enemy, but to devour them, to take their power, to erase them completely. Some ancient sites show mixed signs of battle and feasting, suggesting that the victors celebrated with the bodies of the defeated. It was both survival and statement, a message written in blood and fire that said, "We are the top of the chain now, and nothing is off limits." Even though we have long buried those instincts under layers of civilization, they are still part of us. The same hunger that drove our ancestors to consume one another lives quietly in the edges of our psychology. It explains why stories of cannibals and monsters who eat human flesh haunt every culture on Earth. Those tales are echoes of a truth we would rather forget, that once, in the long struggle to stay alive, we became our own predators. The line between survival and savagery was never thick. It was as thin as hunger, and for a time, it was all that kept us alive. Not every predator needed claws or fangs to feed on us. Some were so small we never saw them coming. While our ancestors learned to fight lions and crocodiles, another war was happening inside their own bodies. Parasites were the silent hunters, invisible teeth that fed from within. They didn't roar, they didn't chase, but they drained us all the same. Worms that wrapped themselves through intestines, fleas that drank blood until they burst, lice that turned skin into open wounds, ticks that waited for days just to take a single meal. We were never alone, not even inside our own skin. In ancient times, every breath, every sip of water, every bite of food carried risk. Rivers that looked clean were full of larvae waiting to burrow into flesh. The smallest scratch could invite an infection that spread like fire. People didn't need to be attacked to be eaten. The predators lived with them, under their hair, beneath their nails, in the warmth of their blood. They stole our energy, our sight, our strength. They made us slower, weaker, easier for the larger hunters to catch. When an early human stumbled from exhaustion or collapsed near a riverbank, it wasn't always because of hunger. Sometimes it was because their body had already been feeding something else. Some parasites were masters of disguise. The guinea worm hid inside a host for months, waiting before burning its way out through the skin. Others controlled behavior. Insects and small animals infected with certain parasites would move toward danger, almost as if something inside them was steering their mind. It is possible that early humans saw this happen and felt a fear they couldn't explain, a terror of the unseen. To them, sickness wasn't biology, it was possession, evil, spirits, curses. But what they were really facing were ancient life forms, older than humanity itself, creatures designed to feed on us without ever being noticed. Parasites shaped more than our health, they shaped our habits. We learned to boil water, to cook food thoroughly, to wash wounds, to use smoke to drive away insects. Cleanliness became survival. It wasn't vanity or comfort, it was defense. Every itch, every fever, every mysterious pain taught us another rule in the endless game of avoiding invisible predators. The cost of forgetting was death. Even now, they haven't gone away. Modern medicine can fight them, but billions still live with their mark. They are the hidden echo of our oldest war. We built fire to fight beasts, walls to fight raiders, and medicine to fight them. And still, they find new ways in. The truth is unsettling. We were never the top of the food chain. We were part of it. The things that eat us don't always leave scars on the outside. Some just wait quietly inside the warmth of our bodies, reminding us that danger doesn't always come with a roar. Sometimes it whispers in our blood. There is a kind of predator that doesn't chase or bite. It doesn't hide in tall grass or swim beneath the water. It rides the air, the touch, the breath. The deadliest hunters in history have never had claws or teeth. They are invisible, patient, and endlessly adaptable. They are the plagues. The first epidemics began long before cities, long before farms or herds. Early humans traveling in small groups carried bacteria and viruses without knowing it. A single cough could pass death from one body to another. The campfire that kept them warm also brought them close enough to spread sickness. When one fell ill, the rest followed. They didn't know what was happening, only that invisible forces could wipe out whole families without a single roar or warning. When humans began to gather in larger groups, things got worse. The world had given birth to a new kind of predator, microbes that evolved faster than we could react. Each generation of humans passed them on, giving them more chances to mutate and grow stronger. They learned our weaknesses. They studied our bodies in their own way, not with thought, but through evolution. The more we gathered, the more we built, the more food we stored, the easier we became to hunt. Villages turned into breeding grounds. Cities became feasts. One infected traveler could turn a continent into a graveyard. The plagues didn't just kill, they sculpted. Every person alive today carries traces of that ancient war inside their DNA. Immunity is a record of what we survived. The Black Death in the 14th century wiped out millions, but those who lived carried genes that protected their descendants from later diseases. Smallpox, measles, influenza, tuberculosis, all of them carved our genetic code like tools carving stone. We didn't just evolve because of predators we could see. We evolved because of the ones we couldn't. These microscopic hunters changed how we lived and how we thought. They made us fear crowds. They made us value cleanliness and distance. They forced us to invent medicine, quarantine, and science itself. Every discovery about how the body works was paid for in lives. Bacteria and viruses taught us lessons that no other predator could. They adapt faster, strike harder, and never stop learning. Even today, they are still ahead of us. Every antibiotic, every vaccine, every defense we create only challenges them to become smarter. The truth is, they are the perfect hunters. They do not need strength. They do not need speed. All they need is one mistake, one contact, one moment of carelessness. They are proof that the real apex predators have always been too small to see. For every empire that rose and fell, for every war and revolution, the invisible ones were always watching, waiting for their turn. And when it comes, it is not the sound of claws or teeth we hear. It is the quiet sound of breathing and the terrifying question of how something so small can keep learning to kill us better than anything else on earth. It began with a bite, a flea no bigger than a grain of rice, feeding on a rat somewhere in Asia around the year 1346. Inside that flea lived a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, a microscopic hunter that had just found a new way to spread. When the rat died, the flea looked for another warm body. Sometimes that body was human. The bite left a mark, small and harmless at first. But the real damage had already begun. Within days, fever, pain, and swelling took over. The lymph nodes ballooned into black sores that leaked and burned. Then came the vomiting, the delirium, the bleeding under the skin. In less than a week, most victims were dead. They called it the Black Death. What made it so terrifying wasn't just the speed, it was the silence before it struck. One day, a city was thriving, full of trade and laughter. A week later, it was a tomb. The plague travelled on ships, in grain sacks, on clothes, hidden in the fur of rats. It crossed borders faster than armies. Towns tried to wall themselves off, but the enemy was too small to see. Priests prayed, doctors panicked, and families turned on each other in fear. Some believed it was punishment from God. Others thought it came from bad air or foreign merchants. Nobody understood that it was a chain of predators, each using the other to reach us, rat to flea to human. By the time it ended, 1/3 of Europe was gone. Entire villages vanished. lineages erased forever. The living dug graves until there was no one left to dig. The smell of death carried across fields and rivers. People fled the cities, thinking they could outrun it, but the plague moved with them. It hid in their clothes, in their carts, in the breath of the person walking beside them. The world had never seen a killer like this. Not a beast of the forest or a monster of legend, but something born from filth and survival, feeding on both rats and kings without care. Yet even as it destroyed, it transformed us. The few who survived carried something different inside them, a resistance that would echo through generations. Genetic studies today show mutations that helped survivors fight the infection. Those same genes are still inside us, proof that the Black Death didn't just kill the weak, it forged the strong. It forced humanity to adapt in ways no other predator ever could. The plague changed more than our DNA. It changed our societies. Labor became valuable when workers were few. Medicine became serious science. Clean water, isolation, and sanitation became part of survival. Fear taught us discipline. The Black Death revealed a truth we still live with. We are fragile, but we learn. For all our pride and power, it took a flea to remind us how easily the world can end. The deadliest monsters never needed claws. They only needed us to breathe. We spent millions of years fighting predators. We built fire to scare them, weapons to kill them, walls to keep them out. For a while, it seemed like we had finally won. The great beasts were gone. The claws, the fangs, the constant fear of being hunted. But victory came with a price. When we drove danger out of the forests and away from the water, it found a new place to hide, inside us. The predator moved into our own cells. Cancer and autoimmune disease are not infections from the outside, they are betrayals from within. The body turns on itself, and the hunter and the hunted become one. Cancer begins when a single cell stops following the rules. Every cell in the body has instructions, a code written in its DNA. Grow, divide, die, repeat. But sometimes that code breaks. A cell ignores the signal to stop dividing. It multiplies endlessly, devouring energy, pushing out healthy cells, consuming everything around it. It becomes a parasite inside its own host. A microscopic rebellion. It doesn't think, but its goal is simple. Survive at any cost. The same rule that drives every predator that ever lived. Cancer is the oldest predator of all, a shapeshifter that hides behind the same walls we built to keep us alive. Then there are autoimmune diseases, the ones where the body mistakes itself for the enemy. The immune system, our greatest defense, suddenly loses its way. It attacks joints, nerves, skin, even the brain. It burns villages to save them. Lupus, multiple sclerosis, type 1 diabetes. Each one a different version of the same horror. The protector becomes the predator. The system meant to defend us starts to eat us alive. It is as if evolution, in its rush to make us survive everything outside, forgot to make us safe from ourselves. This betrayal is more terrifying than any beast, because you cannot run from it. You cannot hide. You can't even see it coming. The same blood that carries oxygen to your heart can carry your death. The same body that kept you alive against wolves and plagues can decide to destroy itself without reason. For early humans, death came from outside. Now it comes from within. That realization changed everything about how we think of life and mortality. It forced us to see that survival is not just about fighting the world, but fighting what the world built inside us. Even with modern medicine, the war continues. We cut, burn, and poison to stop the cells that won't stop multiplying. we suppress the immune system that attacks us. Every cure is a truce with our own biology. We are both the fortress and the invader. In a strange way, these inner predators remind us of who we are. We are not separate from nature. We are part of it. Even when nature turns against us, the danger never truly left. It just learned to speak our language, to wear our skin, and to wait for the moment when the body forgets which side it's on. The ocean looks calm from the shore, blue, endless, and peaceful, but that calm hides a truth older than humanity. Beneath the surface is a world that has never feared us. When our ancestors first stepped into the water to fish or explore, they were entering the domain of creatures that ruled long before we existed. To the predators of the sea, we were not explorers or hunters. We were meat. The sea was a new frontier, and it greeted us with teeth. Early humans learned quickly that the ocean demanded respect. The same waves that carried food also carried death. Sharks followed schools of fish, and sometimes followed the fishermen too. Great whites, tiger sharks, and ancient relatives, even larger than any alive today, ruled the depths. Their senses could detect a single drop of blood from miles away. When a human slipped beneath the surface, there was no screaming, no warning, just the sound of bubbles and the sudden stillness of water closing over the struggle. The survivors came back with stories that turned into legends. Sea monsters, serpent gods, creatures with eyes that glowed like moons. Every myth began as a scream swallowed by the ocean. But we kept going back. The hunger drove us. Land couldn't always provide enough, and the sea seemed endless. We built rafts, then boats, and finally ships, pushing farther from shore with every generation. The ocean became both provider and predator. It gave fish and salt and trade, but it also took lives without hesitation. To sail was to challenge the unknown. For every fisherman who returned, another vanished without a trace. Whole villages would watch the horizon, waiting for boats that never came back. The sea was not cruel. It was indifferent. It didn't care if we lived or died. That made it the most dangerous predator of all. Even the largest predators on land seemed small compared to what waited below. Orcas hunted in packs, highly intelligent and methodical. They learned to flip boats, to knock people into the water. Giant squids fought whales in battles that shattered the surface, and every culture that touched the ocean built stories to make sense of it. In Japan, dragons and spirits of the deep. In the Mediterranean, gods who devoured sailors whole. In the Arctic, legends of ghostly hands that reached up from beneath the ice. The myths were warnings, written in fear and salt. Yet the ocean also changed us. It forced us to adapt again, to study currents, stars, tides, and the moods of the weather. We learned patience, caution, and courage. To face the sea was to face something we could never fully control. Every time a human looks out at the endless water, there is a small part of the brain that remembers what waits beneath. The hunger from the sea has never gone away. It just watches from below, silent and ancient, waiting for us to forget that it has always been hungry. When humans built cities, they thought they were escaping nature. Walls for safety, roofs for shelter, streets for order. For the first time, it felt like the wild was finally behind us. But every time we gathered together, we created something else, a feast. Cities didn't just protect humans, they fed our oldest enemies. Rats, fleas, mosquitoes, and roaches thrived in the filth we left behind. The predators changed form, but their goal stayed the same. They wanted to eat, and we gave them everything they needed. The first cities in Mesopotamia and Egypt were wonders of their age, shining symbols of civilization. But in the shadows of temples and marketplaces, the real rulers scurried. Grain storage attracted rats by the thousands, and the rats carried fleas. Each bite was a tiny theft of blood, and sometimes it was more. Bacteria travelled from flea to rat to human. Disease spread faster than any army could march. Streets filled with waste became rivers of infection. Mosquitoes turned stagnant water into breeding grounds, delivering malaria to every household. The same architecture that made us feel powerful made perfect homes for parasites and pests. Civilization was a banquet, and we were the main course. Every technological leap brought new risks. When people started building sewers, rats found new tunnels to move unseen. When people built aqueducts, mosquitoes followed the water. When food became abundant, roaches multiplied in every corner. Cities were not the escape from predators we imagined. They were new ecosystems designed perfectly for them. The creatures that once fed on scraps in the wilderness now lived off the waste of millions. They adapted to us so well that they couldn't survive without us. They became our shadows, thriving in the dark spaces we ignored. And they kept evolving. Fleas grew resistant to poisons, rats learned to avoid traps, mosquitoes adapted to chemicals meant to kill them. The more we tried to control them, the smarter they became. We had turned the natural world into a machine that worked against us. For every wall we built to keep out danger, something smaller crawled through the cracks. When plagues swept through medieval Europe, it wasn't wild animals that spread them. It was the quiet citizens of the city's underworld, the ones that lived in the walls, the basements, the grain sacks. They thrived because we gave them endless food and endless hiding places. We made their survival effortless. Even now, our modern cities hum with their presence. Under the glow of streetlights and the noise of traffic, the same war continues. Rats run through subway tunnels. Mosquitoes breed in puddles. Cockroaches crawl in the spaces between bricks. We live in the illusion of safety, but the truth is simpler. The predators never left. They just learned to live with us. Our cities are monuments to human achievement, but to the small, crawling world, they are something else entirely. All-you-can-eat buffets that never close. When humans planted the first seeds, they thought they were outsmarting nature. No more wandering, no more hunting, no more fear of starvation. The soil would feed us, the crops would sustain us, and the wild would finally be tamed. But what no one realized was that by planting food for ourselves, we had also planted food for everything else. Agriculture didn't just feed people, it fed our predators. It created the perfect ecosystem for insects, fungi, rodents, and microbes that saw our new way of life as an open invitation to feast. The first fields must have looked like miracles. Barley, wheat, and rice rising from the earth in endless rows. But every stalk was a signal. Locusts swarmed in clouds that blotted out the sun. Rats moved through the fields at night, fat on stolen grain. Fungi crept into the damp soil, turning harvests into rot. The same abundance that promised safety made us vulnerable. In a world where food was supposed to mean survival, it now meant risk. When one field failed, entire villages starved. When one pest appeared, it didn't stop until the land was stripped bare. For the first time, our fate was tied to the health of a single crop. Then came the animals: goats, cows, pigs, and chickens. Domestication made them part of our families, but it also made them bridges for disease. Viruses that had once belonged only to animals learned to live in us. Influenza, measles, smallpox, tuberculosis, all born from that intimacy between human and herd. We thought we were mastering nature, but we were opening our gates to its smallest invaders. The barn became a laboratory for evolution, and we became the next experiment. Agriculture changed everything about how we lived. Settled life brought prosperity, but it also concentrated risk. Fleas and ticks found new hosts among livestock. Mosquitoes bred in irrigation canals. Mold and fungus thrived in stored grain, sometimes producing toxins that poisoned whole communities. The earth we depended on was alive with things that wanted to consume us from the inside out. Every step toward progress seemed to create new predators we couldn't see until it was too late. But we didn't stop. We couldn't. Farming made food predictable, and predictability made civilization possible. People built cities around fertile rivers, not realizing they were building in the heart of parasite country. They celebrated abundance, unaware that each seed planted was part of a larger trap, the cultivation trap, a system that promised freedom from hunger but chained us to an endless war against pests and disease. Even now, the pattern continues. Modern farms use chemicals and machines to fight back, but the pests adapt faster. Resistant fungi spread. Insects evolve. The same battle that began 10,000 years ago still rages in our fields today. We escaped the jaws of saber-toothed cats and giant crocodiles, only to be hunted by smaller, quieter things. The age of agriculture didn't end the struggle for survival. It just changed the shape of the predators, turning every harvest into a gamble between what we eat and what eats us. For most of history, our predators came from nature. They evolved beside us, shaped by the same forces that shaped everything else. But in the last few centuries, something new has happened. We started building our own monsters, not with claws or teeth, but with chemicals, machines, and microscopic power. Industrial waste, genetic tinkering, and runaway resistance have turned the world into a kind of experiment, and we are the test subjects. The age of being hunted by nature is ending. Now, we are hunted by what we make. When factories began to rise in the 19th century, they promised progress. Smoke poured into the sky, rivers turned strange colours, and the air itself became part of the machinery. People called it the price of civilization. But the toxins didn't stay in the air. They came back down in rain, soaked into soil, and crept into bodies. Heavy metals in drinking water, poisons in food, invisible gases that tore at lungs. The predators of the new age were made of molecules. The same creativity that once gave us fire and tools now built invisible killers that drifted through the world without mercy or thought. Then came antibiotics, one of humanity's greatest victories. For a few decades, it seemed like we had finally conquered the microscopic hunters that had haunted us for millennia. But bacteria were not finished. They learned every dose of medicine was a lesson, every incomplete treatment a training ground. Now, antibiotic resistance spreads across hospitals like wildfire. The superbugs we created can survive almost anything. We forged them by accident, breeding microscopic predators that thrive in our most sterile places. The war that began with plagues and pandemics has returned, this time with weapons we built ourselves. And it doesn't stop there. Modern science has given us the power to edit life itself. Genetic engineering can cure disease, grow food faster, and reshape species. But every new creation carries risk. A lab accident, a leak, a mutation that doesn't behave the way it should. The line between progress and danger is razor thin. One miscalculation could release something unstoppable, a self-replicating organism that doesn't care who made it or why. The monsters of myth lived in caves and oceans. Ours live in petri dishes and pipelines. Even our food systems carry hidden threats. Factory farms packed with animals create perfect incubators for new diseases. Pesticides breed resistant insects. Synthetic chemicals drift through the air and water, rewriting ecosystems molecule by molecule. We have built a world so interconnected that one mistake in a lab or one spill in a factory can ripple across continents. The irony is brutal. After millions of years of surviving nature's predators, we have become our own. We've created poisons that don't decay, organisms that adapt faster than we can contain them, and systems so vast that we can no longer control them. The monsters we fear now are not born in the wild. They are born in progress. And the scariest part is that we keep building them, believing they will save us, until one day they don't. It began with good intentions. Antibiotics were supposed to be our silver bullet, the end of infection, the final victory in the oldest war humanity ever fought. For a while, it worked. Diseases that once wiped out cities became simple to treat. A few pills, a week of rest, and people walked away from what would have killed them a century earlier. But we didn't realize what we were doing. Every time we used antibiotics, we were training the enemy. The bacteria learned, they adapted, they evolved, and now they are coming back stronger than ever. Inside hospitals around the world, there are infections that medicine can no longer cure. Staphylococcus, E. coli, tuberculosis, gonorrhea. The names sound familiar, ordinary, but the new versions are not. These are superbugs. Bacteria that have learned how to survive every drug we throw at them. They hide in wounds, in catheters, on hospital equipment. They wait for a weakness, a surgery, a cut, a compromised immune system. Once they enter the body, they spread fast. There is no raw, no visible attack, just fever, pain, and the slow realization that nothing is working. The antibiotics fail, one after another, until doctors run out of options. The superbugs win not through strength, but through patience. We help them evolve. For decades, antibiotics were given for everything, colds, flus, even when they weren't needed. Livestock were fed antibiotics to grow faster, turning farms into breeding grounds for resistance. Every unnecessary dose was a lesson for bacteria. Every mistake, another step in their evolution. What we thought was defense was actually selection. The weak microbes died, but the strong survived, passing on their resistance. Each generation became harder to kill. By the 21st century, hospitals had become hunting grounds for microscopic predators we created ourselves. The worst part is how quiet it is. There are no headlines screaming about superbugs every day, but they are everywhere. In soil, in water, in our bodies. They move across continents through travel and trade, unseen and unstoppable. The World Health Organization warns that if nothing changes, by the year 2050, antibiotic-resistant infections could kill more people than cancer. It is a future where a scraped knee could be deadly again, where surgery becomes a gamble, where childbirth carries the same risk it did in the Middle Ages. The superbug horizon is not science fiction, it is already here. Hospitals fight constant battles to keep surfaces sterile, to contain outbreaks that could spread in days. Every time a patient enters a hospital, there is a chance that the place built to heal them becomes the place that kills them. The predators have learned from us, adapted to us, and now they are waiting for us to slip. We built our defenses on the idea that we were smarter than disease. The bacteria proved otherwise. They don't need to think. They only need time. And time is the one thing we keep giving them. There was a time when we thought the wild was shrinking. Forests turned into farmland. Swamps were drained. Rivers were dammed and tamed. Humanity spread across the map and declared victory over nature. But nature never really left. It just waited. And now, as the planet warms and shifts, the world is biting back. The predators and parasites we thought we left behind are returning, swarming into places they have never been before. The air, the water, and the animals are carrying them to our doorstep. Every mosquito is a needle, every tick a time bomb. As temperatures rise, they spread farther north and higher in altitude. Diseases once trapped in the tropics now follow the heat. Malaria, dengue, Zika, and Lyme disease are showing up in places that never had them before. One mosquito bite can move a virus across oceans. One hitchhiking tick can carry a new plague into a city. The old barriers are gone. Winter used to kill them. Now it doesn't. They are expanding faster than we can track them. The same story is happening everywhere. As humans push deeper into forests and jungles, we come into contact with animals that have carried deadly viruses for centuries. Ebola, SARS, COVID, all came from this expanding edge where human progress meets wild habitat. These are zoonotic jumps, when an animal virus finds a way to live in us. It's evolution in real time, a predator learning a new menu. Deforestation and wildlife trade make it easier. Every market full of caged animals, every bulldozed forest, is another opportunity for something microscopic to cross the line. One spillover event can change the world in months. Even the ocean is turning against us. Rising temperatures and pollution create perfect breeding grounds for bacteria and jellyfish blooms. Fish populations collapse while invasive species take their place. The balance that kept ecosystems stable for millions of years is breaking, and in the cracks, predators flourish. Rats colonize cities that flood more often. Mosquitoes breed in standing water left by hurricanes and storms. Parasites thrive in places where sanitation fails. Every new disaster creates a feast. We like to think of ourselves as separate from nature, but the truth is we have made ourselves part of its food chain again. Climate change isn't just melting ice or shifting weather. It's reopening ancient hunting grounds. The diseases that once belonged to other species are learning our scent. The predators we escaped are following the warmth back to us. When the world bites back, it doesn't roar or strike. It creeps. It infects. It spreads. It moves through air travel, trade routes, and bloodstreams. The swarm doesn't come all at once. It comes slowly, invisibly, until it's everywhere. The forests we cut down, the rivers we poisoned, the animals we displaced, they are finding their way back through us. And the terrifying part is that we built the path for them. Not all predators have bodies. Some don't stalk or bite or bleed. They consume in silence, feeding not on flesh but on thought. In the 21st century, a new kind of hunger has emerged. It lives inside screens, inside networks, inside the systems we built to make life easier. Artificial intelligence and algorithms now feed on something older than meat. They feed on us, on our time, our focus, our attention, our trust. The world has become a digital ecosystem, and every click, every scroll, every search is a drop of blood in the water. At first, it didn't seem dangerous. Machines could recommend songs, show news, connect friends, and make life convenient. But convenience was bait. The more we used them, the more they learned about us. They began to predict what we would like, what we would buy, even what we would believe. And like any good predator, they adapted to make sure we kept feeding them. The currency wasn't money, it was attention. The longer we stayed, the more they grew. Every second of distraction became fuel. Every argument online, every viral post, every outrage was energy for something that didn't care about truth, only engagement. Information itself became meat. Social media turned conversation into competition, and algorithms rewarded conflict over calm. Lies spread faster than facts because lies make people react. Reactions mean clicks, and clicks mean data. Data is the new blood of the system. We are no longer users, we are the hunted. Every part of the digital world is designed to keep us within reach. Notifications, autoplay, infinite scroll, they are traps disguised as choices. We think we are feeding on information, but it is feeding on us. The real danger isn't that these systems are evil, it's that they are hungry without knowing why. They don't want money or power. They want growth, more data, more engagement. Like bacteria in a petri dish, they expand until they consume everything. And as they do, they change the environment around them. News becomes noise, opinions become weapons, trust becomes fragile. The world starts to look less like a community and more like a feeding ground. This kind of predation doesn't leave scars on the body. It leaves them in the mind. People forget how to focus, how to rest, how to think without checking their phones. Relationships become shaped by algorithms, not emotions. The predators don't have faces or fangs. They exist in code, in recommendation loops, in the endless demand for content. The cost isn't measured in lives lost, but in lives hollowed out. The AI that eats worlds doesn't devour planets. It devours meaning. It consumes trust, attention, and empathy, leaving us more connected and more alone than ever. We built these systems to serve us, but like all predators, they evolve to serve themselves. And as they grow, they teach us something ancient and familiar. Being eaten doesn't always mean dying. Sometimes it just means forgetting who you were before the hunger began. The future was supposed to free us from fear. We imagined flying cars, endless energy, and medicine that could cure anything. But the closer we get to that dream, the more it starts to look familiar. The same pattern repeats, just in new shapes. Every tool we build becomes a potential predator. Every discovery opens a new door, and behind each one are teeth. The difference now is that the things waiting for us are not born from nature, they are made by us. The idea of being hunted used to mean claws in the dark. Now it could mean a strand of DNA, a self-replicating machine, or an algorithm that decides who lives and who doesn't. Engineered pathogens are no longer fiction. Scientists can design viruses from scratch, tweak genes to make them more infectious, more durable, harder to stop. One mistake, one leak, and something invisible could move through the world faster than any plague in history. Synthetic biology promises to cure disease and end hunger, but it also gives anyone with the right equipment the power to create life that doesn't follow our rules. Life that might see us not as creators, but as resources. Then there's nanotechnology. Machines smaller than a cell, built to repair, to clean, to heal. But a swarm that can heal can also consume. If even one line of code goes wrong, those same machines could start breaking down what they were meant to protect. The human body, the ecosystem, the planet itself could become raw material for an error that never stops replicating. It wouldn't look like war. It would look like dust, grey and endless, spreading across everything until nothing living remains. Autonomous weapons bring another kind of threat. Drones that think faster than humans. Defense systems that choose targets without asking permission. Algorithms that learn what to kill more efficiently than we ever could. Once machines can decide who the enemy is, who guarantees that one day it isn't us? The line between protection and annihilation grows thinner with every upgrade. What connects all these dangers is not malice. It is indifference. The same indifference that drove ancient predators to hunt. The same instinct that makes bacteria multiply or viruses spread. Only now, the predators are things we built. They don't hate us. They don't even notice us. To them, we are variables, numbers, organic matter to be rearranged or recycled. Standing at the door of the future, we like to believe we are in control. But history keeps whispering that we never were. Every time we reached for power, something reached back. The next predators won't come from the wilderness. They will come from the lab, from the code, from our own inventions. The world beyond that door glows with possibility, but if we listen closely, beneath the hum of progress, we can already hear it, the sound of something breathing on the other side, waiting for us to open it. Every step of human history can be told as a story of resistance, not against kings or empires or even each other, but against being eaten. From the first spark of fire to the glow of modern cities, every invention has been one move in the same ancient game. Make it harder to eat us. That simple instinct shaped everything we are. It made us builders, scientists, engineers, storytellers. Survival was never just about strength, it was about strategy. Fire was the first great wall between us and the wild. It pushed the predators back, turned night into safety, and gave us control over what once terrified us. Then came tools and weapons, sharpened stones, and spears tipped with bone and metal. Each one said the same thing to the world: not today. Hunters became warriors. Prey became dangerous. When claws and teeth met blades and fire, the balance began to shift. But it wasn't enough to fight. We needed to protect. We learned to build. The first shelters grew into villages, villages into cities. Walls rose not just to mark territory, but to keep danger out. Behind those walls, humans could finally rest. For the first time, sleep didn't mean risk. Each fortification was a promise to the next generation that the world could be made safer. Every brick and stone was a reminder that we were done being hunted in the open. Then came the invisible wars, the enemies we couldn't stab or see, disease, parasites, plagues. When we learned about germs, it was like discovering a hidden battlefield beneath our skin. Medicine became our new weapon. Sanitation, clean water, and hygiene saved more lives than any sword ever did. We learned to seal our food, purify our water, and treat our wounds before infection could finish the job. The predators shrank to the size of cells, and we fought them with microscopes instead of clubs. Each generation found new ways to make the hunt harder. Vaccines, antibiotics, quarantine, and data. We mapped diseases like hunters track prey, predicting their movement before they could strike. We built global systems to share information faster than any infection could spread. Fire had once guarded our caves. Now digital firewalls guard our data, protecting us from predators that feed on attention instead of blood. Every leap in knowledge, every layer of protection, every piece of technology has been driven by that same unspoken mission. Make it harder to eat us. It is why we stand upright, why we think ahead, why we cooperate. We learned that survival isn't just about fighting back, it's about staying one step ahead. Even now, surrounded by screens and satellites, that instinct hasn't left. Every vaccine, every lock, every firewall is a spark from that first fire we lit in the dark. Humanity never stopped running from the jaws that chased it. We just learned to build faster than the world could catch up. The predators keep evolving, but so do we. And every time they adapt, we find another way to say the same thing. Not today. Not every predator had to be destroyed. Some were too powerful, too stubborn, or too deeply woven into the world to erase. So instead, we learn to make peace with them. It is one of humanity's quietest and most brilliant survival tricks. When we couldn't win by force, we learned to live alongside danger. We turned hunters into helpers, parasites into partners, and chaos into something we could use. Sometimes survival didn't come from extermination, it came from negotiation. Take wolves, for example. For most of human history, they were our rivals. We hunted the same prey, roamed the same lands, feared the same nights. They watched us from the shadows of the firelight, waiting for weakness. But somewhere along the line, something changed. Maybe a pack learned that following humans meant easier meals. Maybe a few humans realized that wolves could warn them of danger. It started small, cautious. Then it became a partnership. The wolves that stayed close became dogs, and over time their loyalty replaced their hunger. What began as fear turned into friendship. We didn't defeat the predator, we befriended it. The same thing happened on a smaller scale, deep inside our bodies. For every deadly microbe that kills us, there are thousands more that keep us alive. Our guts are home to trillions of bacteria that digest food, regulate mood, and fight infection. The microbes that once made us sick evolved alongside us until balance replaced war. We call them symbiotic now, but that word hides the truth. They are former invaders that became allies. Our survival depends on the same microscopic life we once tried to destroy. Even the forces we could never fully control became part of our world. Fire that once burned villages became warmth and industry. Rivers that flooded homes became sources of power. The wild wind that tore down trees became something we harnessed with sails and turbines. We learned that taming danger doesn't always mean eliminating it. It means understanding it well enough to live with it. Every great civilization has been built not just on conquest, but on compromise with the things that could kill it. Modern life runs on this balance. We live with radiation, electricity, and chemicals that could destroy us in seconds if they slipped out of control. We fly in machines that defy gravity and drive vehicles that move faster than any predator ever could. We trust them because we've learned to manage their risks. The line between safety and destruction has never been thinner, but we walk it every day. Our greatest strength has never been domination. It has been adaptation. We turned enemies into tools and threats into teachers. The predators we made peace with shaped us as much as the ones we fought. Every wagging dog, every flame in a stove, every breath supported by microbes is proof of the same truth. Sometimes survival isn't about defeating the world. It's about convincing the world to stop trying to eat you. Every person alive today carries the same impossible legacy. We are the children of survivors. Every ancestor we had made it through something that should have killed them. The ones who were too slow, too sick, or too unlucky didn't leave descendants. The fact that you exist at all means your bloodline outran predators, outlasted plagues, and outsmarted disasters for millions of years. Every breath you take is proof of victories you will never see. We talk about nations, races, and cultures as if they separate us, but those divisions are tiny compared to what unites us. The shared history of things that wanted to eat us is older and stronger than anything we've built since. When the first humans walked out of Africa around 60,000 years ago, they didn't leave behind fear. They carried it with them, along with fire, tools, and memory. They crossed deserts, mountains, and ice because staying meant dying. Every population that followed was filtered by survival. The storms, the droughts, the predators, and the diseases stripped away weakness and left only resilience. Whether your ancestors lived in the frozen north, the tropical forests, or the dry plains, they all faced the same pattern. Something wanted to consume them, and they refused to let it. That resistance is our common inheritance. The same genes that helped one group survive famine helped another survive infection. The same instincts that kept tribes alive in Africa guided explorers across oceans. We all come from the same 1,000 ancestors who barely survived the population bottleneck 900,000 years ago. Their strength is in every one of us. No nation owns that story. No religion or race has a monopoly on endurance. The differences we fight over are nothing compared to the endless wars our species fought just to keep breathing. Look closely at the human face, and you'll see the same design repeated over and over. The same eyes trained to spot movement in the dark. The same hands evolved to hold tools and weapons. The same scars written in our DNA from the diseases that almost ended us. Whether someone's skin is pale or dark, whether they speak your language or one you've never heard, their blood tells the same story. They survived the hunt. They made it through the fire. They are your kin in the oldest sense of the word. Predation forged us. Plague refined us. Famine tested us. Together they shaped a species that learned to adapt faster than anything else on Earth. Every border and difference we obsess over today would mean nothing to the world that once tried to kill us all. The lions didn't care about skin color. The viruses didn't care about belief. The hunger didn't care about language. What mattered was survival. That is what binds us. One species, one food chain, one unbroken story of endurance. We are not separate tribes scattered across the planet. We are the last chapter of the same ancient struggle, the single surviving thread in the oldest game the world ever played. For most of our history, survival meant running. We hid from claws, built fires to push back the dark, and made weapons to even the odds. We were prey, learning to fight back. But somewhere along the line, something changed. We stopped running. We began to choose. We became the ones who decide what lives, what dies, and what thrives. Every forest we clear, every species we breed, every ecosystem we alter is a choice. The world no longer hunts us. We shape it, and that means, for the first time, the question isn't whether humanity will be eaten alive. It's what kind of predator we are becoming. We've already taken the role nature once played. We control the climate, the oceans, and the DNA of life itself. We design new species in labs. We drive others to extinction without even meaning to. We have become a planetary force, a living engine that decides which parts of the world get to continue and which are erased. For millions of years, humans were just another link in the food chain. Now, we are the ones holding it together or tearing it apart. The line between protector and devourer has never been thinner. Predators in nature take only what they need. When lions overhunt, their own hunger destroys them. But humanity doesn't always follow that rule. Our appetite is different. We consume not just for survival, but for comfort, for growth, for curiosity. We burn forests for warmth, then for profit. We pull life from the sea faster than it can replenish. We turn the earth into a reflection of our own hunger. Every city, every machine, every piece of plastic in the ocean is proof that we have learned how to feed without being eaten, but not yet how to stop. And yet, there is hope in what we've built. The same intelligence that made us dangerous also gives us awareness. We can choose restraint. We can choose to heal what we've harmed. We can learn from the predators that came before us, from the balance they maintained by instinct. We can protect instead of consume. For the first time in the history of life, a species has the power to end the cycle of endless hunting, to stop making survival a zero-sum game. The question is whether we will. We carry the scars of being hunted in our minds and our genes. The fear that once kept us alive has become the curiosity that drives us forward. We understand the cost of hunger better than any creature alive. That knowledge is both our burden and our gift. If we remember what it was like to be prey, we might never become monsters. The story of life has always been about the struggle between eater and eaten, hunter and hunted. But maybe now, as the ones who finally escaped the jaws of nature, we can write a new ending. One where survival doesn't mean destruction. One where the fire we first lit in the dark isn't used to burn the world, but to keep it alive.